Hey, it's Renee here. Today I'm going to show how I use a couple of different pens for my inking when I'm inking my comic book artwork. And I'm going to talk about the differences between this brush pen right here, the Kuretake, and this brush pen here, which I don't remember the name. I'm going to have to put that name in the description so that we know which one it is. And then a series of these Pitt Artist Pens from Faber-Castell. There's different point sizes to these, and I find that they are each beneficial depending on what I'm inking. Now I will not talk about in this video, like for instance, the Cadillac of inking brushes, which is the Winsor Newton Series 7 watercolor brush, short handle. The reason why you want to use a watercolor brush, by the way, is because it's a short handle. If you try to use an oil painting brush, the handle's much longer and you don't want to poke yourself in the eye when you're inking. So I won't be talking about this one here. Only strictly pens and brushes. And I'm going to show just exactly what it is I do, at least when I approach my comic book inking, when I'm illustrating my comic books. So let's go ahead and start with, and I'm just going to kind of illustrate here, doing simple little drawings. So let's say I'm drawing, I don't know if you will be able to see this here, but I'm just kind of drawing a flexed arm. Really rough here, nothing super fancy. You will show a little bit of biceps. It's like a bodybuilder posing. Because like comic books, I associate with just drawing muscular figures. Just the way I grew up reading comics. The comic books I grew up reading, I should say. So, all right, I'm not even going to draw the whole body because I just want to kind of show how I use the brushes in different ways. So now that I've got that sketched in, the first thing I want to talk about is if I was just going to ink strictly with this pen here, which it simulates using, I'm going to put these off to the side here, these are the pens. It simulates using like one of these brushes here, like an actual traditional brush. But instead we have all the benefits of not having to have the inkwell, like right here, this is what I use to ink, you know, and water and towels and all that stuff to clean off the rag, to clean off the brush with a rag as I'm inking. So we whip this out, the Kuretake brush, and I like to use this for coming in and like really hitting those shadow areas, those super thick juicy lines when I'm inking. So you know, let's just say I really want to underscore like maybe a light source coming from a top, like straight from here, from above. Then I'll kind of want to get like those super heavy thick lines. Also partially kind of showing shadow maybe a little bit, but basically those thick lines I'm going to tend to put them on the bottom to show the weight, to show thickness. And then up here, let's see, I'm drawing the little bit of the hand, the fist, going into the wrist here. It can kind of really make that really finer compared to the bottom. And here, we'll just kind of go around just like that. Again, maybe a little bit finer up here. And then as we come to here, down by where the pec ties into the bicep area, shoulder, it's a little bit heavier. And then maybe from here, it kind of lightens up a little bit. Now, when I'm inking, I'm going to primarily use like the side of the brush to create these heavy, thick areas. Kind of come in with the tip and then kind of really put in a heavy, thick line there. And you could do everything here with this pen, but I think that when I work using a variety of different brush pens or pens, I can get a better effect. So I'm just going to kind of switch real quick here to one of the brush pens, and I'm going to use the Faber-Castell. It is a number, let's see what number is that. I think it's a point, I like to use a point, I think it's a 0.5, or it's called an S on the cap. It has an S on it, just like that, so you can see. So when I'm inking, and this point size is actually a 0.3, so it's not quite a half a point, or not as small as a quarter point, but it's a 0.3. I find that it's got a really nice thickness for creating that finer line that's thinner, but it's not quite like super wispy. Like this allows me to really just draw some really nice lines like this. Again, it's hard to get that with the brush for me, and I think when I'm brushing it feels a lot more feathery. But let's say I want to like put some details in the bicep, maybe the tie-in right here, show a little bit of shading, and also showing a little bit of some. That was the cat. The cat made a really funny sound. Anyway, okay, so going back to this right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to do something a little more kind of not scratchy, but it's going to have a little bit of a fade to that right there. So, and I want to make this pretty simple. So I'm just going to go like that. So you get kind of like this line work. And we're not cross-hatching here, but we're just kind of basically drawing in just some basic simple lines. Just like that. It kind of trails off of like a main line and kind of blends into what would be like the belly of the muscle area. So I like doing that in some of my drawings, depending on the character, and if it's a muscular character, then I can do that. Obviously, if it's not quite as muscular, I'm not going to be doing that kind of stuff. But I will do it to a certain extent, even if it is a figure, whatever the body part is, or the person's kind of like how they're built. It's still a really nice way to create, like, for instance, I'll draw this off to the side here. Just like if you have your line work here and you want to create like a tie-in, just a simple little, just like that. Kind of like all you really need to show some kind of transition, right? I have no idea what that is. I'm just showing how I would use the pen in that way. But now if I'm drawing here, let's say, let's just kind of render out the rest of the arm here. A little bit of some musculature here going on. There's the bottom part of the tricep. Maybe this person's in really good shape and you can kind of see some of the veins underneath here. Just like that. So this pen is really good for doing these types of quick little tick marks here. Okay. And again, this is my style. This is the way I use the pen to do the type of renderings that I like to do. Just like that. Super fine. You know, not a lot of, there are some artists that when they want to show like an edge of some sort, they'll put these little tick lines just like that. And you know, that's an artistic choice. You know, I tend to like to do something where, again, if I'm drawing a line and I want to show some kind of feathering or some kind of connection or overlap, I prefer to do this right here, this kind of like little thick, and then kind of just easily kind of just blends out. I don't know, it kind of feels kind of old school to me, the way this style is, this kind of feathering here. I would be lying if I were to tell you that I wasn't trying to somehow channel Neil Adams with this kind of feathering here, or even like the inking of Paul Neary over Alan Davis's pencil artwork. Just this really nice little clean. It's simple, but it's so effective the way that inking shows like a tie-in. Maybe this is a shoulder here, a shoulder area. You have a little bit of tricep right here, and then just like kind of get those lines, and then finish up with one single line like that. So anyway, I'm drawing this arm here, this flexed arm, and again, I can show you what I'm doing here with this pen right here. Again, it's not very complicated. I may do a little bit of blending there, blending the line into more of, like in this case, kind of like the inside elbow as the tricep is flexed here, the bicep and tricep, I mean the arm. And then that's, you know, I could go even crazier here with, like, let's say I wanted to put a little more detail here, like something like that, something sinewy, filling like the muscles. And then I could just really totally, like right here, maybe I want to tie this in right here, so I'll do more of this kind of line work right there. And then here, I might take this heavy part here and see how this kind of tucks in here. I may just put like 1 or 2 lines, 1, 2, maybe 3. And that's really it right there that I would do in this case. And so let's say I'm going to go ahead and pencil out more of this, the body here, our little sample body here. We'll draw, let's see, the lats right there from the front view, and then we've got a little bit of some of the serratus here showing through. Serratus muscles are almost finger-like, and then they kind of tie into here, like the intercostals. Ish. I should be actually. Let's see. I'm gonna have to sketch this all out, but I won't render it all. Okay, lower pecs, shoulders, rib cage would be somewhere around here probably. And we would then have these finger-like muscles here. Then maybe we'll go ahead and kind of bring down a little bit, just like that. And that's kind of like my default lats, latissimus, and then the front anterior, or the front, the serratus muscles here, and some of the muscles here, serratus there, and then of course abs and whatnot. But then going back into the inking part, what I will do is I can outline this here, just line it just like that, come down here, again simple lines, one or two, very clearly, and I would say at least in my mind very confidently pulling these down, being super clean about it. Okay, this is now getting down near by the waist, kind of the obliques of this character here. And then if I want to come back in with this heavier pen, heavier brush pen, not a heavier pen, I can come in with and create a heavier stroke in here. Again, I can make these thicker right here, these muscles thicker, just like that. And I know it seems like I'm bouncing around a lot, switching between this pen and that pen, but it really, I think, in the end does produce a different look to the artwork itself, the line art that I'm putting down. And then, let's see, from right here, I may want to, again, do some of this kind of stuff here. See, the inclination is to put a lot of detail in here, but I really don't need to do that kind of stuff here. Again, I like to keep it super clean and super simple. I mean, I might be tempted to do maybe a little bit of some rim lighting here, just like that. And then let's say maybe the bicep, I actually want to show a little bit of a split there. Oh, that was a mistake. But anyway, the idea is that it's very lightly done, you know, very lightly done. And then for this area here, you know, maybe I do want to show a little bit of this kind of thing here, shows some kind of cross striations. If for nothing more, it's more of a dramatic effect to kind of bring out a little bit more of just trying to just kind of play around with, you know, creating some kind of tension and whatnot. These kind of lines right here, these tension lines I call them, they give just an indication of like what direction the muscle is traveling in. And again, this may be more detail than I actually need, but it's a good way to kind of understand, like, you know, if I want to create volume and a little bit of surface, I don't need to put a ton of cross hatching in here. I'm not saying that it's wrong to do cross hatching or anything like that. It's kind of like, I think part of it is also a stylistic choice for each artist as they want to do this kind of stuff. But for me, I do like to do, again, like just like these little, like I did here, like, you know, like these little lines here, just like little. I'll go ahead and draw go ahead and expand into the rib cage here for this character. Again, I'll come in with like some really heavy lines because I want to emphasize like a shadow. Again, we kind of established shadows coming from up top. Let's go ahead and make this a little thicker and heavier too. Put some shadow in here. And a lot of times all you really need is just to put like a little dot like that, or a little drop in there to kind of indicate this kind of feeling of depth or shadow. Right here, kind of like where this kind of ties in, I may just do that. And then the rest of the area, and I'll go back to this pen, and I may do a little bit of cross hatching here. Again, it's going to be super slight, just like that. I might cross hatch here, but then again, less is more. I find that if I'm inking and I'm not really sure if I should put down ink or not, what I do is I don't put the ink down. If I step away from it for a few minutes or even the next day, and I come back to it and I decide, wow, I really need to put ink there, or I want to, you know, add a little bit more of the rendering, I can certainly come back and add it. The drawback is if you do put ink here and you do ink something and I do it, then I decide the next day that, wow, that doesn't really look good. Then I've got to use some kind of opaque white to get that off, or to cover it up. So right here we've got, maybe let's go back to the arm here. We've got his supravascular arm. So he's got quite the prominent vein going on there. And then again, to kind of underscore these veins right here, I might put some thicker lines, show them, you know, that there is some depth, or the shadow, or the veins have quite the thickness to them. And so this is kind of my technique when I'm doing these kind of things. And then for hands, let's see, I should probably reference this, but I'm just going to straight up draw it. And it's probably not going to look entirely correct, but let's just get a feeling. Again, I like to ink with these thin lines, showing kind of like the lighter areas first. You know, maybe we'll have his finger pointing. Why not? That's cool. All right, he's pointing up. This kind of curves, and then the thumb, we're just going to say the thumb is kind of doing this kind of thing right now. Again, probably not anatomically correct. I would probably reference this in a real piece of artwork, but for this demo, I'm just going to leave it like that. And I might come back in here and add thicker lines to the bottoms of the fingers, just like that. Again, just to kind of show some depth with the shadows there. Okay, so there you have it. We have kind of like an arm being flexed, and you know, maybe we see a little bit of the trapezius muscle up here. And this is, you know, the drawing here. So that's how I'm using these pens right now, just like that. You've actually seen how I apply the thicker areas of the ink first, and then how I now go ahead and just add finer lines, and then I'll just work to refine this if I need to as I'm drawing the piece. So that's primarily what I use, how I combo these two pens together. Again, this is a brush pen, and this is a marker. I should say it's a pen. It's a pen. It's an ink pen. And the other big other things I like to use these brush pens for is, let's say, I'm going to go ahead and switch now to, I'm just going to draw something different here, is this particular brush right here. Mountains or rocks. Let's just kind of create like a rocky structure here. We'll just kind of determine that the light source is maybe coming from this side. Okay, so we've got the texture of the rock, or the structure of the rock, and trying to cut, you know, trying to determine, you know, where are the different sides of this rock. The different, what am I trying to say? The different, there's a word I'm searching for and I can't think of it right now. The different planes, you know, depending on how this rock is broken down, or how it was formed in nature, right? So essentially I'm just kind of trying to determine where the shadows are. So with this very basic structure here for a rock, nothing fancy right now, right? I've done that. I like to take a brush like this. Let's see if this has got some ink in it. Okay, that's got ink in it. Okay, cool. So you can see how that, is that in the shot? You can see how, like, this paper is not a rough, it's not a hot finish either, but you can see that it has just a little amount, it has just enough texture to be able to use a brush like this to paint in, like, let's say, the shadows. So I may start off using the finer side of the brush pen, just like this, just to indicate and draw the edge again of the rock here. It's like that. And then when it comes to the shadow areas, you know, I'm really just kind of working from my own imagination on this. But I'm going to try and kind of hit almost like a dry brush type of effect. And again, these brush pens are a little bit trickier to work with. I just find that this particular brush pen tends to work well in this type of pursuit of creating this kind of rocky texture. And I find that this pen, I feel like I can beat it up a lot more. If I was using a brush like this, like a Winsor Newton Series 7, which is a pricey brush, I would not be so inclined to use that. I've purchased over my life like probably 10 of these over the course, because they do wear out eventually. And I've used them also for painting with watercolors and gouache. But as I do more of my inking and you start to use that brush, I find that I I really kind of want a beater brush to do that. And these, for whatever reason, these brushes, because they are synthetic tips, they can really take a lot of beating. It just takes a certain amount of figuring out with your own hand and how you hold the brush what's going to create that kind of broken open look, right, as you're inking here. So I try to do that, trying to create as much of a natural feel, trying to impart a kind of a rocky, certainly not a very uniform look to the work, to kind of give it a rough look that might, at least make the viewer, indicate to the viewer that this is a stony or rocky texture that we're looking at. So again, try to use the side of the brush just to kind of pick it up, or drop it, pick it up slightly, or pick it up quickly while kind of skimming the surface. And again, you got to fool around with this thing on your own time. Get some paper, get one of these brushes or something similar to it, and use it to figure out how your touch and how you hold the pen and how you angle it and the amount of pressure you deliver and how soon you take it off the page creates the effect, and then from there adjust. Now I will say that if I'm creating rock-like textures, I'll probably go to the tip of the pen and create just kind of like little divots or little dots here. They're not even dots, they're just like abstract shapes. They're more like blots than dots, right? I'm kind of blotting down here. And then I'll use the tip to maybe render maybe a little bit of some line here. Maybe there's nature somehow, or maybe something man-made struck these rocks. I don't know. You kind of have to figure out how to use the pen to create certain textures. And I know that in the past, I've gone so far as to just totally, noodle around with the tip of one of these brush pens to just create something that really is just abstract for my rock formations, just like this. And now I'm just totally going to town, kind of just going off on this right here. And then what I'll do is I'll go back to another one of these brush pens, and there's different pen tip sizes. This is the Pitt pen that's got like an M on it, and according to this pen size, it's telling me that this is telling me that it doesn't have a size labeled on it, actually. Not that I could tell. It just has M, and it says black pen 199, and it's got 3 asterisks after it. But anyway, it's a much thicker point, and so I'll use this to create just like maybe a little bit of line work. Maybe I'll put some cracks here and there, just like that, and just to kind of give it a feeling of some other type of mark making to it, so that it has like some variety even within the rocky cragginess of this texture here. And it's the cool thing about these types of pens is you can just go in and just totally like just almost like I'm trying to rip the page by making really super aggressive marks on the paper. And I have to admit that is really fun to do. There's just no way to compare this when you're working digitally to do this same type of really, just digging into the paper, creating this type of texture. And as you can see here, now I'm just really going into just a space where like the artwork's just kind of leading me, the pen's leading me, and my hand is just off on its own. And now I'm just creating these marks right here. I don't know if you can hear that. Probably can't. I'm actually mic'd. And I'm recording this on my iPhone overhead. And now I've got all this kind of scratchy marks that I'm making here. And then if I want, come back in with my brush pen here, my beater brush pen, and then maybe I close up some of these spaces here, and then now we've got a part of the rock that's more in shadow, and we're helping kind of solidify as we get away further from the light source that this area just gets darker and darker. Again, this is a fun way to, if you get one, like a scrap piece of paper, just kind of noodle around, see what it's like. And admittedly, painting rocks is super easy because like there's no real structure. I mean, there is a structure to rock if you study the planes. The planes of a rock is what I mean, in the different sides, and the way you can light them so that they appear realistic. But for the most part, the brush itself is just like so easy to just, with one brush stroke, just like that, give the impression, oh, that's rough, oh, that's stone, uncut stone, rough rock. So That's how I use this pen here with the in conjunction with a finer tip brush pen.